During the Jedi's war with the Sith, Satele Shan had been raised by Tassiel Shan, and like her ancestors, she had been taught the code of Odan. As Tassiel continued to reject the Jedi's request for an induction, Satele would show aptitude in the ability of foresight, and she saw a great abyss in the Force. As Tassiel inscribed her learnings for future generations, their exile was soon interrupted by the Sith Empire as they tried to control the hyperspace lanes, and in the melee, Satele and Tassiel were separated, but not before Satele was ordered to leave the planet. The Jedi was equipped with several generations of knowledge, and leaving the planet in an Imperial starfighter, she overheard the Imperial chatter discussing movements over Dromund Kaas. Having learned about the planet as synonymous with the Sith, Satele started to believe that her vision was about to become reality, but when she followed the path of the other Jedi, her expectations of a full-blown war was met by embers and a great wound in the Force. Amidst a field of death and destruction, a singular set of lights glowed from the flagship of the Sith, so Satele traversed the debris to enter the exposed hangar. With alarms flaring through the ship, initiated by the death of their leader, Satele breezes past the Imperial soldiers and guardsmen and descended to the bridge. Satele could sense the darkness from Varaun, but also his overconfidence, and she stabbed a Sith in his back before he could even turn. The Jedi was surprised to see acceptance instead of denial, and when the Sith let out a final exhalation, she could only hear the distinct humming of the electrical motors. The Jedi tried to search for any potential surviving allies, and after failing to contact any ship in the battle or the ground, their silence was broken by incoming Republic reinforcements. While Satele had little to no involvement in the battle, when the Chancellor heard of her survival, the Jedi had accidentally become a part of a propaganda project. Despite a major victory for the Galactic Republic, the remains of the Sith Empire were bigger than the Republic, so they needed the support of the rest of the galaxy. The last Jedi's years of exile and hiding had made her reluctant to be involved in politics, but if she were to rebuild the Jedi, she could not go alone. After meeting with the Chancellor on Coruscant, the de facto Grand Master of the Jedi decided to use the planet as the Jedi base instead of Tython, so it was more accessible to potential students. With the knowledge collected from Tassiel and Revan, Satele formulates her own Jedi code, which was similar to the one of Odan. With none of the other older Jedi restricting the growth of the Order, the Jedi entered into their greatest era, and free of any significant Sith activity, the Order expanded beyond the walls of Coruscant. Over the next 1500 years, some of the old mystique of the Jedi was replaced by widespread support, and the Order established beacons across the galaxy to symbolize their authority. Even with the Jedi becoming more open-minded, this did not prevent Jedi Master Thanius from leaving the Order and eventually reviving the Sith. The warning of the threat of the Sith was a shock to the Jedi, but many of the Jedi had no intentions of leaving the Order, and it was only a select group of pure-blood Sith on Korriban who continued the legacy of their ancient predecessors. After a further 500 years of disorganized Sith, who were either picked off by Jedi or were destroyed fighting each other for supremacy, the Jedi encountered a young man from Apatros. The man born as Dessel but given the name Bane made the Republic soldiers victims of his deception as he used the Force to manipulate them in card games. At the age of 18, Bane would have normally been too old to be considered for training, but such was his high midichlorian count, and the darkness and ambition the Council could sense in Bane, he was too dangerous to be left in the open without training. Having witnessed the loss of Thanius 500 years earlier, the Jedi were more open to the views of Bane, and everyone believed he was destined to be a great Jedi, with some considering him to be the chosen one, given his lack of connection to his father. What the Jedi had underestimated, though, was the effect of Bane's abuse-ridden childhood and his desire to achieve greatness. Bane would often be seen in the Jedi archives, hiding from his superiors that he was searching for those who sought power, and he would learn of Darth Ruin's attempts to try and revive the Sith. Bane saw flaws in the Sith's plan to defeat the Jedi, and believed their quest for individual power had been hindering their bigger goal of defeating the Jedi. Whilst the Jedi initially tried to accept some of Bane's radical views, Bane was slowly drifting apart from the others, and he would often be provided with missions on distant worlds. But for all the Jedi who alienated Bane after he became a knight, there was one Jedi who saw greatness. The Jedi Master Skir Khan had sensed the Jedi were growing predictable and too close to the Senate, so he grew closer to Bane. Khan served as an informal master to Bane, with the Council hoping this last resort could bring the rogue Jedi back to their side. The Council's wishes were initially met with success. With Khan's abilities in battle meditation, the two Jedi formed an unusual force bond, but for Bane, this was a stepping stone to greatness. The two Jedi quietly left the Order to no one's notice, as the Council's patience and reasoning for keeping them had grown weary, but soon the rogue Jedi started to fall out. Bane didn't agree with Khan's idea that they should gather the hidden Sith, as he believed that to manipulate the weak was not a worthy demonstration of power. Khan now felt Bane would be a threat that fire-eclipsed the Jedi, so he cleverly guided the former knight to Korriban under the pretense of finding a suitable apprentice. Once the two Jedi arrived to the Valley of the Dark Lords, Khan turned to face Bane, and raising his arms aloft, he summoned his army of hidden Sith. Legions of Sith rose from crevices disguised as archaeological sites, and moved to trap Bane, so he leapt onto the lower level of the tomb of Marka Ragnos. Bane's eyes glowed a sickly yellow for the first time, as he felt a great darkness building within him from Khan's betrayal. Calling upon this new surge of power, Bane reached to the skies, and he started to drain the lives of the Sith around him. The army of Sith slowed to a standstill as they grasped their heads in pain, but Bane was also crippled by his yet-to-be mastered powers, until they all looked overhead and saw the Republic fleet had arrived. The Jedi had been alerted by the Republic soldiers on Korriban, and the flamboyant Jedi Master Farfalla arrived to prevent the Sith rebellion. But if the Jedi thought this was similar to the other Sith legions, they were severely mistaken. With Bane exhausted from his attack, Khan summoned students from the old Sith Academy, but the fleet had no regard for the ancient tombs, and scattered cannon fire across the valley. Khan guided his army below ground, but Bane moved into the network of tombs when he heard a voice. Bane was drawn into the tomb of Zozan, whose spirit had been waiting in a holocron for thousands of years. As the Republic began to take over the valley, Bane finally committed himself to the dark side, and pledged to learn from the ancient Sith. The new master and apprentice were hidden from the Jedi when the Republic completed their victory over Khan's Sith rebellion, and without knowledge of time passing in the outside world, Bane indulged himself into Sith archives. After several decades of learning, Zozan had completed the training of Bane, and for a final act as a spirit, she suspended her apprentice in stasis through a dark side ritual, waiting for the time to be awoken. That is it for part 4 of What If the Jedi Allowed Attachments. If you'd like to see the next part of this What If, or any other video, feel free to leave your comments down below. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.